Okay, and we're live. Hello, everyone. This is Rise to Ways here with Truth Through Science. This is going to be the pilot episode of. Wait, why isn't it? Why isn't it saying it's live here?
I'm showing live
I know it's not saying live on the.
on YouTube.
Yeah. Now, hold on. Let me reload that.
Check your
No,
live
it's still
status on there.
saying it's offline.
Huh. Let's see here. I'm showing you are live. Hold on. I'm opening up
Yes.
the video right now.
Oh God damn it. Let me try rest. Mm,
There was a problem with playback. Tap to retry. That's on my end though. Hold on.
okay, hold
All
on.
right, you're live,
No,
man.
it's
We're
I know, but it's on my YouTube. It says offline. Come on, why is? Okay, opening it up on my phone. I just won't be able to see comments all
oh,
that
you will.
fast.
You'll be
No,
all right.
my phone has a stupid lag.
You have not seen my phone and its stupidity.
It takes 4 minutes for me to see a comment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay,
so
well, might as well begin.
yeah, I guess. Um, it still bothers me. I want to figure out why it says it's not live. I am live.
Yeah, you're
So what?
live. It's the pilot
I
episode, man. Troubleshoot
I know.
down the line. It'll be all right.
Wait, stream now. I just want to start it now. I'm clicking on stream now. What the hell? Maybe if I. Oh well. Okay. Um. Yeah. Maybe I'll figure this out on a future chat. This doesn't want to work for me. Um. I'm Wise to Ways. Here with Truth to Science. Uh, this is the pilot episode of a new series called Thought Crimes, where I ask what someone believes, why they believe it, and how they came to believe it.
All right.
So, without further ado, Truth, what is it exactly you do believe with
Well,
regards to religion?
with me, it's I'm an atheist, obviously, and I really hold to the methodological naturalism that you get out of the scientific method because, in my mind, you can test it, you can see it. I believe what I can see and what can be shown, and I don't know every field of science perfectly, but I do trust the science enough and the method enough to be able to trust it to the point where, okay, this group of scientists in geology or whatever, they say that this is what the case is, and if it's the majority and if they can show it and if it survived peer review, then hey, I'm good with it. But yeah, I was always encouraged from a young age to study the sciences, and I never really, I'm one of those unique cases in where I didn't get exposed to any religious doctrine or beliefs until I was 8 years old. So, I mean, literally, that's the first time I set foot in a church. I had only a passing glance of what God was and what God was supposed to be and what religion was in general. So it was kind of weird to me Sunday waking up early, and instead of sleeping in, we went to church, and the first lesson was, Noah's Ark, which even at 8 years old, I had some questions that needed to be answered, and they were not answered to my satisfaction. So, you know, being the kid that I was, I just kept doing what I was doing what I'd always been taught, which was ask questions. And those questions never really yielded any actual answers. So, I established real quick that religion was not really factual at all. And I just went from there. I mean, I never bought it. So
Okay. How was it? Hold on. Sorry if it stops to echo. I am mute that. There we go.
all
Okay.
right.
Perfect. Uh, Bit strange looking at a few second delay version of my face, but whatever. Um, how was it the first time you went into a church, um, and heard people say this is absolutely true?
Well, it
This is an immutable fact of the universe.
well, I, the church that I went to, my mom was a Southern Baptist, and that's the first church we went to was a Southern Baptist church, and that's the only church I went to when I was a kid. Um, the whole thing when they were telling the story of Noah in that first Sunday school class I had, all the other kids in the Sunday school class were just, yeah, oh yeah, that's right, that yeah, okay, and then I'm the black sheep that starts asking questions, and it went south because the kids are like the other kids in class are like, yeah, I know this story, this is awesome, yeah, and I'm asking questions like, well, what did the carnivores eat after they got off, and for that matter, what did the herbivores eat when they got off the boat, and how did they survive a year out on open water. And it got to the point where the Sunday school teacher just she cocked her head to the side like a dog that's heard a weird noise, and she's like, what, why is he asking these questions? How does he not buy this? I was never actually properly indoctrinated, and my parents accidentally raised an atheist.
That
And
must have been quite something for them to learn, huh?
the Sunday school teacher, to her credit, she did not know what to say to me. She had literally no answers outside of the most basic apologetics. And at 8 years old, I'm sitting there asking questions like, well, how did this happen? And eventually it got to the point where it was, you just got to take it on faith, or you're
So
thinking too much.
yes, so it was just you need to stop thinking and just take our word for it. And
Yeah.
I think we can all say that those aren't satisfactory answers.
No, no, they were not,
It
not at 8 years
it
old. They weren't.
actually it quite aptly, which is why this was the first title for the poll I ran, a thought crime. They did not want you to think.
Which actually went against everything that my parents had taught me up until that point, because they had encouraged me to study the sciences, to because I showed an interest in science early on. Excuse me. I showed an early interest in science, and they encouraged that. And I was learning all kinds of stuff. And when they talked about Noah's Ark, I'm sitting there like, I've never read this before. Where's this found? And it was only found in one book. And I'm sitting there like, that's just not going to cut it.
Yeah, it is. They do want you to believe some pretty crazy things on on faith, and I think for some of us, it's fair to say that faith just doesn't cut it as an answer. We want
No,
actual answers that could actually satiate. I think that's the word.
I think
Sate
so. Yeah,
our
yeah.
hunger for knowledge.
The funny thing is, my mom and I asked her and my grandparents after church and after the sermon, which I think was that sermon? It was one of the classics. I think it wasn't the creation story. I think it was Sodom and Gomorrah or something like that. I didn't pay attention to it really, but when we got back to the house, I was asking questions. Hey, this is what we covered in Sunday school, and apparently the Sunday school teacher had talked to my mom
Oh
and
no.
established that I was asking questions. And I asked questions, and they, to their credit, they tried to give me some form of answer. But what the answers came down to was either magic, faith, or you're just thinking too much. You can't question this all powerful being. And I'm sitting there like, that is the exact opposite of what you taught me. So at that point forward, pretty much, I just established that religion was just a crock, and I just kind of went through the motions and sat there and did my thing because at 8 years old, what am I going to say? I don't want to go to church today, which I'm getting in the car anyway. I don't have a say in the matter at this point, so I just kind of went through the motions and just kept my mouth shut and just went from there. And as I progressed through the grades in school, and especially in high school when I started learning biology, that just tore the story apart even more. And I'm sitting there like, there's no way. And eventually, at like the age of 16, when I got my driver's license, I had the option to go or not to go. And they stopped making me go to church, which was just awesome. Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah, I could see that. Because I know I when I started doubting, I was still going to church, and probably about 5 or so months into doubting, it was just I had almost no desire to be at church. Um, just because it kept adding to my list of questions that
Yeah.
just was never being answered.
Well, even
And it does get frustrating because I still have this question from 5 weeks ago, and you're just compounding it because now you have all these other aspects that I need answered if I want to accept this.
yeah. And
And at
that's
the time,
that's
I
what they
was
don't do.
desperate. At the time, I was desperate for any answer. It could be the worst answer imaginable, and I would have gladly eaten it up because I desperately wanted to preserve my faith, but I couldn't even have that answered. So
Yeah. I
it
never
you
had
do
that
have
much burden, really, when you get right down
and
to it.
and I do get uh very jealous of you for that because the the mental turmoil it takes,
Yeah.
it goes deep.
The reason that I never had that issue is actually really simple, and I'm actually really lucky that it happened. I'm a Navy brat. My dad did a whole career in the Navy, and some of my first memories were in Japan, a different country where Christianity is not present. Now, I don't know how devoutly they went to church before then, if at all, but spending a couple of years in Japan where you can't really find a church, and even I mean, you got churches on base, but that's on base. And my
Is
parents had better things to do with their time on the weekends than go to church, so they kind of fell away from it. And as a result, I was never exposed to it. So that first time, I mean, when we came back to the States when I was what, second grade, I think, first or second
is
grade.
isn't
Yeah,
Japan mainly Buddhist and Shinto? I think is the name of the
mainly,
religion.
yeah, but again, I'm kind of fuzzy on that. Mainly, yeah, Buddhist and Shinto, which one, the former is more of a philosophy than anything. It's not really a religion per se. I don't believe, I don't think it has an actual deity attached to it.
There are always such things as atheistic religions,
Yeah.
so it does
So,
it because it does have the core. It does have dogmas to it. It does have this and that. It does have
yeah.
it has answers to questions, frankly, can't
Right.
answer. But so it does technically qualify as a religion.
Yeah. But
Um, but
but
more importantly, Snail is wanting to know what exactly do you choose as a moral system?
as a moral system,
Seeing as how you more than likely reject the Christian claim of morality and its moral systems.
well, the interesting thing is my morals, they come from, by and large, my parents, and even though they were and still are to this day believers, they made no mention of God at all. So my morals come from what they taught me is right and wrong. It's wrong to lie. It's right to tell the truth. It's wrong to steal, and all that stuff. But it was given to me in a different format, other than, hey, this all powerful deity says this is wrong. It was, hey, my parents told me that this is wrong. This is how they explained to me that this is wrong or right, as the case may be. And as I got older, you look into how morals evolve in social species. You cannot get anywhere in life by consistently screwing the people around you. You will be ostracized, you will be imprisoned, you will be, banished. So, there's no, the society as a whole dictates what the morals are. But I learned my moral values from my parents, who did not involve a God in it at all. They just said, okay, this is what society accepts, and this is what society does not accept. So that's where I got that from. And I've carried that through to this day. And I understand now that I'm older how moral standards evolve, which is why, slavery is illegal now. You know, Women's rights. You can't effectively own women anymore. And morals have evolved over time to the point where it's gotten to the point where, if you're doing things that society does not accept, then society is going to put a pressure on you to correct yourself, or you're going to be ostracized. And it's just going to be that much harder to live your life, to procreate and move on. It's, kind of an evolution thing.
Yeah, seeing as how we are social species, uh, basic peer pressure does have quite a strong effect on us. Um, but still wanted to further clarify, saying you identify as a secular humanist, a hedonist? How would you personally identify yourself?
Well, I'm a humanist, as far as I can tell. A humanist, and a methodological naturalist. If science can't measure it, then there's no reason for me to believe it. So I don't believe in God or ghosts or goblins or anything like that. And there's reasons behind that, because there's no actual physical evidence for those things. If you produce physical evidence of a ghost, all right, I'm down. Let's study this shit.
I do have one evidence for goblins. You ever put your clothes in the dryer and
Oh,
and you're missing a sock?
those
I'm
aren't goblins.
convinced.
Those aren't
I'm
goblins. Those are
convinced.
gremlins. Completely different.
Okay, you're right. You're right. I do make that mistake. Oh God. I
I
am
had
sorry,
gremlins
Gremlins.
in
Do
the
not
aircraft.
steal my. I swear to God, Gremlins, if you steal my Captain America socks, I'm a mortal someone.
We had the same
Twitter,
problem on the aircraft.
YouTube, all that. That is a joke. Please,
Yeah.
please do not instantly get rid of my channel.
When I was when I was an active Marine, and I was working on helicopters, we had a running joke, gremlins in the aircraft. This system isn't working right, so we go out there with a wrench and we smash the gremlin's head in, and hell, the problem solved.
Sounds about right. Um, so just to further clarify, you did say you were methodological. Geez, I don't do not like saying
Naturalist.
that word. Naturalist. Uh, is there any caveats to it? Like any beliefs that you may hold that or even may suspect contradict that? Just like, say, for instance, any superstitions, any clear beliefs that aren't rational, that aren't actually true, but you still just by the back of your mind still somewhat
Well,
believe them.
I do have some suspicions, honestly. While I don't believe in ghosts or goblins or anything like that, you go through your life, you see some weird shit. And for example, my wife and her mother, and all of her side of the family really have this weird thing where if they have a dream about snakes, someone in the immediate family is either in imminent mortal danger or they are going to pass away. They're going to die. And to
Wait,
this day,
aren't those two the same things?
well, kind of, but imminent mortal danger, you can survive. But generally, when they dream of snakes, to this day, I mean, her side of the family and my side of the family, they're getting on in years. So you're going to expect to see someone in the family pass away every so often. But to this day, within a few days of either one of them having one of those dreams, dreaming of snakes, oddly enough, somebody dies, and I can't explain it.
So there is.
It's weird, I mean, they told me this at first, and they're like, I dreamed of snakes, and my wife said, I dreamed of snakes, and her mom went, oh my god, and within a week,
Best
somebody's
best
dead
go
in the
ahead and
family.
start buying black clothes.
It's
Start
weird.
saving up for the funeral.
It's one of those weird things, and it extends to family friends as well, close family friends. And
Hmm.
this kind of thing, the last time it happened was a family friend, and they had the one, I forget which one it was. They had the dream of snakes, and then within a few days, that family friend was dead, and I'm sitting there like, what in the hell? How is this happening? It's not something I can easily explain, and I can't dismiss it out of hand because it it's not accurate to hey, within X days of this dream. It's usually within a week or two. I mean, it varies, but it's just weird, you know.
Uh, that does sound weird. Uh, but that's your only, like, hey, I know this is a completely rational or maybe even coincidental
Yeah,
event.
that's
Uh,
really the only thing. Other than that, and random ghost stories from my dad actually that I can't substantiate. You know, other than that, methodological naturalism has played out the course for me. There's only one or two things that I can't readily explain. And, it doesn't really, it bugs me a little bit that I can't,
I
but,
mean, well, that's only
at the
natural.
same time, I'm willing to investigate it, I'm willing to look into it, but, it's still, other than that, it's kind of weird. But outside of that, there's really nothing else superstitious wise that seems to pan out, other than apparently Friday the 13th is a lucky day for the entire family.
That is the opposite of how that should be.
My father in law's
Does
social
your
security number is my father in law's social security number has 666 in it. So if that tells you anything,
That's actually quite hilarious.
it is.
I would pay good money for that social security number. Um, I know you it's already sort of started to answer this with your intro statement. How how exactly did you come to form your beliefs? Any? any moments of doubt where it's, hey, maybe those, surely there's a better way to believe than this. Would it be easier to believe X over this? Anything like that?
Not really, no. From my earliest memories, science and the scientific method and the investigations have always panned out. You know, I don't know everything about science or claim to know everything about science. My specialty is aviation, electronics, a little bit of biology, um, you know, just stuff that I've picked up along the way, but it's always panned out. And I haven't had any real reason to doubt it because since science is a self correcting process, it comes down to eventually, if it's wrong, somebody's going to correct it. Like, take Newtonian physics, for example. It couldn't accurately predict where Mercury was going to be, but Einstein came along with relativity, and those equations corrected for that. You know, we still use Newtonian physics on
I
the
mean,
large scale.
on a large scale, they do still
Yeah,
tend
they still work.
to
That's
be
why the theory hasn't
correct.
been completely replaced. It still works, and that's where I come from. If you can show me that it applies universally, well, not universally, but if you can show me that it applies consistently, that's what I'm going to believe. I don't operate on faith, and I really have a hard time thinking like people that do operate on faith because of it. I mean, I understand that they have a lot emotionally invested in whatever they believe, but at the same time, that's not the way my mind works. I focus on what can be shown. I focus on facts, and you know, that's where I come from. If you can't show me something, if you can't demonstrate it, then I literally have no reason to believe.
Fair enough. I'm in that same boat. Uh, is there anything you would like to clarify on your beliefs? Maybe some misunderstandings with your position from with the general public. Um,
Yeah,
any
I've run
like,
across some people.
grievances, really? I guess would be the right word.
Well, I've run across some people that have equated my I don't want to say adherence to science, but I don't really have a better term at the time at the moment. They've equated it to a religious faith, and the difference is that you know if someone believes by faith, you can show them everything in the world. Hey, this is backed up by this is backed up by that, and they will not change their position because it contradicts their faith. If you can show me to be incorrect and how I'm incorrect and where I messed up and show me exactly what the actual facts are, I will change my position. I will adjust my position and my beliefs as necessary based on the evidence. But if you can't, then we're going to have a disconnect. And equating my adherence to the scientific method as a faith based belief is not going to fly well with me because faith and evidence to me are two completely different things that have absolutely nothing in common with each other at all.
I absolutely. There was a sassy atheist wants to know if you have any religious family members, and if so, have they accepted you, uh, despite you not
Oh,
accepting what they do.
that's actually kind of a funny story. I mean, the tip off was there from the beginning. At 8 years old when I walked into the church after that first Sunday school lesson.
Uh, I,
But I
I,
do.
I'll, I will add a caveat to it. Do you
What's that?
have any religious? I don't want to quite say zealots, but the
Zealots,
the
the
fanatic,
the
the
fundamentalists.
fundamentalist.
No, I don't have. I might have. My grandmother might be a fundamentalist, but basically, my whole family I think it was in my mid 20s. They thought I believed, they thought I was good with it because I actually did go when I said I went through the motions, I meant it because, all of the peers that I had were getting baptized and saved and all that stuff. So, everyone started looking at me like, what's wrong with this kid? Why isn't he getting saved? So, eventually I went through the motions and got the whole baptism thing done just to get them to stop looking at me like that. But at the same time, I never bought it. So, it was just a show of, it was just going through the motions pretty much. But I do have pretty much everyone in my family besides myself and maybe one of my cousins is a religious believer of one faith or another. Um, and it was actually an interesting conversation because when it finally slipped out in my mid 20s that I was an atheist, my dad was actually visiting and he tried to reconvert me when I was taking him back to the airport from his visit. And I'm living in California at this point, and it's a 45-minute drive to San Diego, and
So it was a long 45-minute drive.
that was a long 45 minutes. And eventually, he's saying, God loves you, blah blah blah, and all this other stuff. And finally, I'm like, look, this is actually technically your fault because you know
That must have been awkward.
oh, he kind of gave me this weird blank stare for a minute, and then I explained to him, look, you and mom, because they're divorced now, you and mom always encouraged me to explore the sciences, to approach problems from a logical standpoint, to look for legitimate answers to my questions, to ask those questions, to find the actual answers. And then when religion came along and you told me that I was supposed to just believe it just because, that didn't mesh with what you taught me. So it's technically your fault that you raised an atheist. You raised a critical thinker. You raised somebody that's going to ask the questions that you never did. And my dad actually stopped and he mulled that over for a minute. And then he said, shit, you're right.
Oh, that must have been awkward. That
And
that I
he
that
has not.
the when a parent admits that their child is right, you
Mhm.
know you know every thought is running through their mind of
Oh, yeah. And
I
to
have to
this day,
kick my own ass now.
ever since that conversation, I had a similar conversation with my mom and my grandparents, which was just lovely. But ever
I can
since those
imagine.
conversations, they haven't pushed it. They haven't done anything, untoward or anything like that religiously to try to bring me back into the fold. They understand where I'm coming from. They understand why I believe the way I do. So I don't really run into a whole lot of trouble from them. They'll still do their, bless the meal and pray for, safe travels and all that. And I really don't mind that but they don't try to push it. They don't try to make me come back into the fold. They don't try to do well, not come back into the fold. They don't try to make me go into the fold in the first place because they understand that the way that they raised me, they raised someone to ask questions. They raised someone that is looking for legitimate answers, and that's where I'm coming from, and they haven't really pushed it since. Maybe a little bit of pushback early on, but after that, they stopped.
All right. Um, and now, honestly, for the biggest question, the one that I'm really wanting this entire series to truly hinge on for its name, the thought crime.
Oh boy.
Um, would anything make you change your mind? What would it take to make
What
you
would it
do
take?
it? Basically, a complete 180 on your beliefs.
Uh, I've actually considered this one before, and there are that's hard to really say, and for something that would make me change my mind, it would have to be pretty compelling. You know, it would have to break the laws of physics as I know them, and it would have to be something that would be incredibly profound. I mean, a good test, a good start to this would be to take a 1 inch cube block of balsa wood and turn it into a 1 inch cube of gold. You know, that's a good start, and we're going to take it from there. I mean, there's going to be some questions involved. There's going to be some experimentation involved. But I'm tempted to default to Matt Dillahunty and what he said. You know, an omnipotent and all powerful being would know what would change my mind and would be able to provide that. But you know, when you get right down to it, we're talking about some world breaking physics here that need to be violated for me to believe in a god, because that's not part of my normal day-to-day life. I don't interact with, I don't speak with, I don't have anything to do with any gods whatsoever. So if a god wants to change my mind and convince me that it's real, there's a burden of proof that needs to be met here.
And it's a pretty heavy one based
Yeah.
off of your description.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking breaking the laws of physics. We're talking, uh, you know, warping reality. We're talking like the Infinity Gauntlet kind of thing here. Okay.
Oh, hopefully not to that extent. I don't want another case of pedal. I'm
No,
still not over that.
I'm not cool with that either. God, I'm so not
Just a
cool
stock. I don't feel so well.
with it.
Um, yeah, how about maybe not even a theistic god, but more of a deistic, a god that
Mm,
just kind of just
okay.
set everything in motion and then fucked off.
And they just they set everything in motion and they kind of walked away.
Yeah.
Actually, Snail knows this book, Gravity Dreams by Ellie Modisett Jr. It covers a deistic god, sort of, kind of. It's a being that has a pretty broad and far-reaching power. Um, it's not a god that anyone is familiar with, and you know the main character winds up interacting with it later on in the story, and something like what happens to the main character, yeah, that'd be pretty damn compelling. I don't want to spoil it if you want to read it, but you know, the thing that happens to the main character in the course of this story, that would be some pretty compelling shit.
Simply because I've never even heard of the book. Um, could you would you mind going into any details on that?
Okay, spoiler warning, just for everyone that doesn't want to be spoiled. Later on in the book, this takes place in the future, where the main character is an interstellar pilot. Um, this being uh, basically duplicates him for some reason. I can't remember exactly why. I've only read it once, but he duplicates his body and alters his body on a fundamental level. And by the time this whole ordeal is said and done, he's been effectively split into two people, one of which experienced one thing and one of which did not. And, you know, his genetics have been altered so that he can walk freely around the world, because there's a whole society that fears enhanced humans, kind of thing. And he can walk freely between that society and his current society. You know, and this was all done within the spans of, you know, a couple of minutes. So
Ooh,
yeah,
so a
uh,
pretty
it's a pretty
fast change.
profound experience and a pretty vast change to his basic genetic structure, as well as effectively splitting him into two individuals in alternate realities. So yeah, that would be some pretty compelling stuff right
All right. And now for the final question. Again from Sassy Atheist. Uh,
there.
yeah, good on you for asking questions.
Oh
Anyone else
yeah.
want to participate? Anyone else? Um, before you met your wife, were you open to marrying a religious person? And I'm going to go ahead and guess that seeing as how most of the population is religious, I would have to say yes. So I'm going to go and just say, would you be
Well,
open to marrying a not quite hyper religious, but definitely put it as a main focus
well,
within their life?
my wife actually qualifies as a deist Gnostic. She doesn't know, but she doesn't follow the Christian God. She does believe that there is a God of sorts. But I don't. We've talked about it before. She's asked me questions about what I believe, and I've answered them. I've answered questions that she's had, concerning where she stands, and basically, it's one of those things like politics. We don't really touch on it pretty. We don't touch on it very often. But you know, she believes what she believes, and that's fine. And she knows good and well that she's probably never going to get me to set foot in a church. But
Yeah, wouldn't want you send file or catching file.
no, I mean it's one of those things where um, I her family, her side of the family is religious. My side of the family is religious. I'm kind of the black sheep here, and her grandparents are Seventh Day Adventists, and she spent a lot of time with them when she was growing up. So I would hazard a guess that I know the Bible just as well as they do, if not a little bit better in some points. And I very much doubt they'd be able to answer any questions that I might have. But it's a subject that we tend to avoid in favor of, hey, raising the kids. And we don't raise them religious per se. We provide them with information, you know, same way I was raised. And you know, we provide the kids with information. If they have questions, we'll answer them. If they have questions about religion, we'll answer them. If they want to go to church, we'll take them. If they have, questions about science, we'll answer them. We'll give them all the information that they need. There's no forbidden knowledge here. We'll give them all the knowledge that they want, everything they ask for, and we'll let them come to their own decisions. If my kids wind up being believers, that's fine. I don't care. That's their deal. But, they're going to make an informed decision.
Okay. That answered the upcoming question um, that I was going to ask. So good on you for preemptively answering the question.
I am nothing if not, looking into the future here.
Um, let's see. Let's see if I can think of one final question.
Go
Um,
ahead.
do you have? Hmm, I'm not quite sure how to word this, so give me a second while I think of a way, because in my head it sounds fine, but I know I won't be able to articulate it.
Ah,
Um, is there any big misconception that you feel is made by the general public on what atheism is?
oh, yes, yes. And part of that is I've got a fledgling YouTube channel, and I'm gonna shill for that here.
I have at it.
It's called Truth Through Science, and I've got one lonely video there that pretty much lays out this whole thing. The one of the one of the misconceptions that I see a lot of regular people have is a complete lack of understanding of what science actually is and what it studies, specifically scientific terms like theory and law, and the regular everyday speak, they mean different things than what science actually uses them for. And That's one of the things that I'm going to try to correct somehow. I'm going to try to correct that. That's actually the subject of my next video that I'm working on right now is scientific terminology and what it actually means instead of what the general public thinks it means. But that's one of the big disconnects that I have in my discussions online and in person because sometimes people just, you know, they don't know, and that's fine. But I'm going to do what I can to correct that because, as far as I'm concerned, bad information is tantamount to, if you're propagating it intentionally or even unintentionally and you've been corrected on it, that's tantamount to lying. If you're going to talk about something in the scientific field, you need to use the proper terminology. And if you don't know what that terminology is, then you need to correct that because there's no point in getting into a debate on science if you're going to spout off with it's just a theory, because that just tells me that you have no understanding at all and you need to be correct, which is going to create a whole conversation all on its own.
Man, the Hovens must get up your ever living ass if that's the case.
Honestly, at this point, some of some of them, they may not know, and there are people out there that don't know, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to correct that. If you don't know, that's fine. I can correct that. But if you do know and you're still propagating it, we're going to have a disconnect and we're going to have a major issue.
Yeah. Um, although, how do you feel when someone asks you a question, say about cosmic inflation theory,
Okay.
um, or Big Bang? When they ask, well, what caused it? You say you don't know, and they take that as a sign of, well, if you don't know that, how can it be true? So therefore, it must have been insult Bronze Age belief healed.
Well, in my mind, I don't know is a completely valid response because it's not dishonest. If you're asked why something happens, like what caused the Big Bang, what caused the inflation of the universe, and you say you don't know, that's an honest explanation. You're not excuse me, you're not trying to shove a preconceived notion into what you want to believe. You're admitting that you don't know and you're open to what might be true.
Uh,
So
uh,
to say that, to me, saying I don't know is a perfectly valid answer to a question because it's an honest position. You don't know. So you're waiting for evidence to convince you one way or the other. And I really don't understand why people feel that that's a victory. You don't know, therefore it must be, God. That's just God of the gaps. And that irritates me. Well, that's one of the few things that irritates me to all ends. That and, not knowing scientific terminology sufficiently to debate it. But, I don't know is a completely valid response. It's an honest position and it's open to change.
yeah, it is the intellectually honest route to go. And I think I can agree with you that it insulting a god where we don't know it is entirely a fallacious argument. On top of just you almost glorifying your general willful ignorance about it.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what it does for me. If you're saying that I don't know is a valid response because X and X is a god that cannot be verified, then that is an intellectually dishonest position for me. If you are willing enough to admit that you don't know, but you're not trying to shove the square peg of religion into the round hole of reality here, you know, that's a position that I can accept if you don't know. But if you're trying to shove that square peg of religion into the round hole of reality, there's going to be a disconnect there because, you know, you don't have anything supporting your position.
Yeah. Uh, and I would say on that note that I have exhausted all of my questions for you.
What do we got in the
Um,
chat? Let's find out.
I'm not seeing any more questions. Um,
Let's see here.
so
I
I
say we give about 5 minutes, just, you know, me and you chat, maybe 5 minutes to see if someone pops up with a question, just to give them a chance because we've been talking quite a bit.
we have.
Let's do a little Q&A here. 5-10 minutes.
I've been prompting for questions the entire time. Um, so I would say for right now is the chance for you to chill out for your child.
Well,
This
like I said
entire five
earlier,
all for you to do just that
all
to all
right.
three viewers.
Well, like I said, you know, I've got a fledgling channel, Truth Through Science. I've got one lonely video up. I'm gonna have another one up hopefully by Sunday about scientific terminology and what it actually means, and I'll be moving on from there. I'm going to be covering biology, aviation, and electronics, and, you know, some pretty basic scientific stuff. And I'm going to try and branch out from there. And there's a couple of videos I have in mind, one of which concerns Dr. Andrew Snelling, who works for AIG, a geologist, and is one of the few actual scientists that they have on the payroll. And I'm going to explain why I don't think anything he has to put out there is credible at all because of the statement of faith that AIG always makes their employees sign. Um, you know, I'm just getting started. I'm trying to expand out a little bit and try and do what I can to correct some of the bad information, misinformation, and misrepresentation that science often runs into. So that's the whole point of my channel.
All right. Um, is is there any questions you would like to see asked to other atheists or the theists that I do end up interviewing? Because I want to try to get it to where everyone poses a question that I ask the next person I interview.
Uh,
So episode one will get a question for episode two, two for three, three, so on and so on.
okay. Um, well, let's see here. For the theist, um, I would ask, you know, well, what you're doing is pretty close to what I would ask. You know, why do you believe what you believe? What led you to that? What evidence could you possibly present to an atheist that is outside accounts, that is verifiable from outside accounts, extra biblical accounts, I should say, that can show any of the Bible to be true? And I understand that there are people and places in the Bible that are actually real life people. But as for the events that transpire, you know, what can you present that has an extra biblical value that can be used to bolster your claim, so to speak?
Okay, so the what can you provide to help your argument?
Yes. What can you provide outside of the Bible to bolster your argument?
Okay,
Um,
and how about for if the next interview is also an atheist?
the next interview is also an atheist. That's a hard one. Yeah. Um,
I mean, like I said with the title, I want people to think. I want people to question their
Yeah,
beliefs.
I get that.
So,
Um, well, we've already established what would change my mind. I would wonder if if the next person you interview is an atheist. I would wonder what evidence, not evidence, what, well, yeah, actually, what evidence would change their mind in turn. You know, you asked me what would change my mind. I'm curious to hear what the next atheist would say in my
uh,
place.
to be fair, that's just a standard question of the show's format.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the best I can come up with off the top of my head.
okay. Uh,
Because I don't know what the, I mean, I don't know if the next atheist is going to accept evolution or not. I don't know if the next atheist
no,
is
I
going
mean
to be,
that's
you
fine.
know,
That's the thing. I just
if
because
they,
there's
if
such
they're
a
not,
wider range,
okay,
so
if they're
it can
not,
be a wide range of questions you can
if
pose.
they're, if they're not a methodological naturalist like I am, what evidence would they, say, for example, they don't believe in something that I have stated, like science, you know, the theory of evolution, theory of gravity. What would change their mind, evidence wise, to put them on board with, you know, with science,
Okay.
pretty much? You know, what evidence would need to be provided to them to change their mind on, say, not believing in the theory of evolution or something like that, you know?
Okay. I think that's a perfectly valid question. So on that regard, I do believe we are coming to an end. Do you have any closing thing you would like to say? Um, maybe as just speaking just as yourself to anyone who watched the stream, just anything, any final words?
Not really. You know, you can find me on Twitter at truth through at through science. I'd use the same handle, the same name that I do for my YouTube channel. You know, just if you like what I say, follow. If you don't, whatever. Uh, Support my little fledgling channel if you can find it. I know it's hard to search for when you don't have 3 videos up, because YouTube won't let you actually search for anyone that doesn't have more than 3 videos up, hardly.
Oh, really? I didn't
But
know that.
yeah, apparently it's part of the algorithm. If you don't have at least 3 videos up, it's hard to find somebody. I ran into that same problem when I was looking for Alucard, trying
Huh.
to find his channel. But yeah, just if you like what I'm talking about, if you want to know more, if you want, you know, just hop on my channel, see my videos, post what you want to see in the future. I'm gonna. This is pretty much an audience demand field right now. So you know,
Uh, yeah. All right. And I would say on that regard, uh, this has been Rise to Ways with Truth to Science. And again, thank you. And remember, everyone, thought it's never a crime.